When Hamas-led Palestinian fighters launched their deadly assault in Israel on October 7th, many foreign governments rushed to support Israel. Of course, there is no bigger supporter of Israel than the United States, who immediately declared Israel has a right to self-defense. But as Israel prepares for a ground invasion into Gaza, there is a massive problem that, if not corrected, has the potential to not only damage Israel forever, but also lead to the entire collapse of the United States world-led order. Let me explain. Clear evidence has already emerged that Israel is violating international law first established during the Geneva Conventions. On October 11th, the Israeli authorities cut off water, electricity, fuel, internet access, and food to Gaza, amounting to unlawful collective punishment of the civilian population. Although Israeli officials have restored water to some parts of southern Gaza, they are keeping the tap shut in most of the territory. On October 12th, the International Committee of the Red Cross issued a statement noting that without power, Gaza's hospitals are turning into morgues. On October 12th, Human Rights Watch reported that Israel used white phosphorus in operations in Gaza and Lebanon, and because white phosphorus can cause excruciating burns and long-term medical suffering, its use in populated areas violates international law. And this is where things get very interesting. US officials have either been unwilling or unauthorized to condemn these Israeli violations of international humanitarian law, putting both the US and Israel in a very difficult position. But first, please don't misunderstand my message today. Before I continue any further, let me be crystal clear on one important fact. I do not support nor condone the violent actions Hamas carried out against innocent Jewish civilians on October 7th. These brutal killings and actions from Hamas against Israel were horrific, and nothing justifies these brutal actions. Israel has every right to defend itself, but one act of terrorism doesn't justify Israel to launch an attack without following international humanitarian laws and ensuring that innocent civilian lives in Gaza are spared. Political scientist Ian Bremmer, who has been an outstanding voice of reason throughout this entire conflict, tells the situation exactly as it is. Destroying Hamas will make Israel more safe. Destroying the lives of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza will make Israel less safe. Protecting the lives of civilians is a matter of basic humanity. It's also in the self-interest of Israeli citizens. The United States is the only country in the world that can influence and guide Israel right now. In fact, Israel wouldn't have a military or defense force if it weren't for the Americans. The US sends billions of dollars of military aid every year to Israel, but if US weapons are used in military attacks against innocent civilians, the United States government is required under international law to stop supplying those weapons. Of course, we all know the US military oftentimes doesn't follow international law, and for many countries, most especially those in the global south, the inability of the US government to influence and control Israel represents a huge double standard in American foreign policy. US officials have no trouble criticizing other governments for violations of international law. Last year, US Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, condemned Russia's conduct in the war in Ukraine. She advocated areas of Ukraine had been without food, water, electricity, or gas for weeks, and immediately called out Russia for violating international law. But once again, not a single word from the US government when Israel engages in the exact same activity. Maybe the Biden administration reacted differently to Russia than it did to Israel because it believes the actions of Hamas now justifies Israel's conduct. But international law is not enforced on whether you feel the action is justified or not. If it was, then no party to a conflict would ever feel an obligation to abide by the laws of war. When the United States lets violations of international humanitarian laws slide, that harms America's ability to uphold the rules-based order. To help illustrate my point, I'm going to bring in the expert analysis of Mehdi Hasan, a well-known British-American broadcaster who hosts his own TV show on MSNBC. Get ready for the truth bomb that every American needs to hear.
And President Biden came to office reminding everyone that he had a lot of foreign policy experience. He knows world leaders. He has friends around the world. What this crisis is showing us is that a lot of Arab leaders are not happy with him, didn't want to meet with him. And we forget about the global south. We forget that the rest of the world sees what we do, sees our double standards abroad. This crisis in Gaza, this war, it means the global south will never listen to us again. They're never going to listen to us about rules-based rule-based orders. We're never going to get through to them.
This is a point I've made in countless videos on this channel. The global south has been completely ignored by the US and its allies for decades, and this is why China is the dominant superpower and trusted ally amongst countries in the global south. Unfortunately, most Americans live in an information bubble. They have no idea what is going on outside the US borders because our media parrots the belief of American exceptionalism, that we are the greatest nation on earth and every nation wants to follow America's lead. But once you get outside the US borders, the story is often quite different.
Biden and a lot of people in America may see Ukraine and Israel as the same. A lot of people around the world see Russia and Israel the same. Right, yeah. They see Russia occupying and invading another country and annexing land and dropping bombs on civilians and saying, hey, human shields. And they see Israel doing that in Gaza. Israel is the occupier of the West Bank and Gaza. So that kind of stuff, I know we don't talk about it here in the US on television in Congress. I'm glad you asked the question because that's what the rest of the world is talking about. That's why America's foreign policy is so unpopular, especially in the Middle East.
Once again, the United States is the only country that can influence Israel in this moment. Since the founding of the country in 1948, Israel has been the largest recipient of US military assistance, accepting more than $158 billion from the US government. Simply put, Israel wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for US military support. But the US has a duty to make sure our partners uphold agreed upon standards. The 2022 Civilian Harm Mitigation Response Action Plan is a law that states U.S. security partners are under the same legal obligations as U.S. forces to minimize harm to civilians. Earlier this year, the U.S. government also passed the Conventional Arms Transfer Policy of 2023. Under the law, the U.S. State Department must stop transferring arms to countries that harm civilians with U.S. weapons. There is no way that Washington can look past these laws and give an exception to Israel. It would completely backfire and destroy any remaining credibility the US government has left on the international stage. The reason these policies were implemented, of course, was in response to the tragic errors the US military made in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. The US-led war on terror in the Middle East was an absolute disaster for the region, resulting in the death of millions of innocent civilians. The United States undermined our own mission to the Middle East by failing to prioritize civilian protection. This is exactly why three-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Thomas Friedman wrote this essay for the New York Times entitled, "Israel is about to make a terrible mistake." In my opinion, this is the best article on the Israel and Hamas war, and here is the main takeaway from Friedman. I believe that if Israel rushes headlong into Gaza, now to destroy Hamas, and does so without expressing a clear commitment to seek a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority and end Jewish settlements deep in the West Bank, it will be making a grave mistake that will be devastating for Israeli interests and American interests. One massive problem for Israel is the country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not the leader Israel needs right now, as he represents the most far-right extreme politician in any democracy in the entire world. Let that fact sink in. Netanyahu is a right-wing extremist who has surrounded himself with a cabinet of members that are even more far-right extreme than he is. And it's his cabinet who is pushing Israel forward with the plan to invade Gaza and get the revenge all of them desperately seek against Hamas. Once again, Ian Bremmer warns us what's really at stake. Hamas has 30 to 40,000 armed fighters in Gaza. The scale of Israeli military operations required to destroy Hamas and the human cost for civilians caught up in that war will be far, far greater than what we've witnessed to date. Netanyahu should not allow this to happen, but he has trapped himself. He needs those right-wing extremists in his coalition to keep himself out of jail on corruption charges. Unfortunately, Israeli military leaders are more hawkish than even the prime minister right now. They are red with rage and determined to deliver a blow to Hamas that the whole neighborhood will never forget. But the entire world is on edge, as this conflict is on the verge of a tipping point and has the potential to trigger a Middle East war with every great power and regional power participating. Once started, this would be very difficult to stop. And once again, Thomas Friedman shares his vision and plan that would actually work for the region. But if Israel feels it must reoccupy Gaza to destroy Hamas and restore its deterrence and security, I repeat, it must pair that military operation with a new commitment to pursue a two-state solution with those Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza ready to make peace with Israel. Hamas does not represent Palestine. It's important that we make this clarification. There are many innocent Palestinians on the West Bank and in Gaza who simply just want the chance to live the very values that the US government and our allies preach every day. If a group of people have no hope, no future, then this is the exact breeding ground for extreme terrorism, and it's why Hamas was democratically elected into power in 2006. Therefore, Hamas represents an ideology more than a group of people. As long as the illegal settlements, Gaza blockade desperation, poverty, denied self-determination, and the ongoing killing of Palestinians continue, the ideology of Hamas will continue, only with even greater support. Therefore, the only solution that will truly get rid of Hamas is a new two-state solution that gives those Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza a chance to make peace with Israel and a chance for hope and a better future. Once again, the entire global south and vast majority of the world already recognize Palestine as an independent state. And once again, it's Ian Bremmer who tells us all the reality of the situation. The essential truth of the Middle East conflict remains that Israelis and Palestinians must find ways to live together peacefully. There is no other way. This is the message that Joe Biden needs to be delivering to Netanyahu. Whether he has the courage to do so and keep Israel accountable to international humanitarian laws is something we are all waiting to see. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point in the video, and I appreciate your support. Of course, we're going to keep monitoring the situation and also bring in the expert analysis from experts who have had real on-the-ground experience in the Middle East, and most especially in Palestine and Gaza. Stay tuned for some exciting videos. In addition, if you are interested in receiving some additional content from me and some exclusive bonus content, I want you to check out our Locals page. Simply go to locals.com/CyrusJansen and check out our exclusive member content, and you can join for free. And also there is a premium section there that you can support the channel and also receive exclusive content from me. Once again, my name is Cyrus. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.